Hi there, it's Polly here. As you can clearly see, I'm in Greenland. No, sorry, actually I'm in Bali, with me a compadre. And yes, we've come specifically here just to do a review for you guys. Yes, I am I'm traveling the tropics again. So, I've found one cracker of a game. It is called Fantastic Battles. It is a miniatures game for fantasy miniatures, and yeah, I finally found it, the miniatures game that I'm going to play. Okay, so a lot of fantasy miniatures games pretty much seem to have been done by ex-Warhammer players and so on, and so they carry a lot of Warhammer baggage. A lot of times they are very much the same game mechanics and so on. This one isn't. These are really good rules, crisp and clear, a fantastic find. So fantastic, in fact, yes, I've gone out and spent about $500 buying troops for it. But so these things are designed for any scale. However, they work, I think, really well for smaller scales in particular. 10 mil is what I would really suggest for these, that Warmaster scale. You can get figures for that scale all over Etsy. Check Etsy. There are a ton of makers who not only do kind of re-imagings of the Warmaster stuff, but their own. Also, Magister Militum, Pendragon, and a whole bunch of other printing groups do all kinds of 10 mil. Like, just spend a couple of hours doing a search, and you come up with fantastic stuff, you know, lizard people and all kinds of groovy things. Anyway, these rules. So, it's an element-based game, which means you don't remove individual miniatures. A troop unit or troop company under these rules is a square base. You can use any basing you want, but if you're making it specifically with this, a square base. For the smaller scales, about 40 mils by 40 mils. Definitely a square base. You can form units from a single base, or for kind of regular units, you can group up to 4 of them together into a unit. The individual companies obviously are easy to maneuver, and they have special maneuver rules for individual companies. They can wheel and pivot and do things that, you know, other guys can't. The bigger companies obviously have to like wheel based on, you know, using one company as a corner as you move, so they're a little bit clumsier. However, they have more staying power, and some irregular groups can actually pack up to 8 guys into a single unit. They can go too deep for a great ravening rabbleless horde, which is fantastic. There are individual characters in this, however, they don't have the same domination that you would often get in, say, Warhammer and so on, where he who has the most expensive model wins. Because these companies represent, you know, 500 guys, a single guy, no matter how fantastic they might be, no, his effect is moral rather than physical. And that's exactly what these rules do. So, the essential core, before we get into the cool niggly bits, you have points as a budget from which to purchase your troops, and you design your army. Now then, your army consists of units made up from these companies. They have basic frameworks that you get the companies, you know, from. So it could be an elite company, it could be a formed company representing kind of close order guys, it could be a loose company representing people fighting in looser formation, tribesmen, skirmishers, you know, packs of wild dogs, that kind of thing. You can also get fantastic beasts, dragons, there's ordnance, and there's vehicles as basic frameworks. Now, these things are all rated for their movement, for their resolve, which is how much of a bashing they'll take in combat before they say, "Sold this for a game of soldiers," and go home. And their number of melee dice they roll, and their melee defense. Now, those frameworks, I say, are only a guideline and shouldn't constrain you if you have other ideas. In fact, they say there are 7 different formats rather than be completely constrained by, oh, this isn't a formed company, or I want these guys to be tribesmen, but I want these ones to have, you know, more of an impact than the others. So I wanted to use the elite framework. It says do it, just look on it as framework 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, rather than specifically this is only for loose tribal guys or what have you. All right, now we get to the fun parts. These things are defined by traits, and each army can have an army shtick. Have a general trait which is applied to the bulk of its troops. So let us say you decide you're going to do an elven army. So you decide the elves are all swift, they get greater movement. You have that as a army shtick, an army trait, and the elven units in the army will have that. However, if you decide you're going to have some satyrs or, you know, centaurs or river trolls or something like that, you know, as part of your thing, they don't necessarily have to have that same shtick, you know, because they will cost you points. You know, they are a different grouping, a different species, or they're from a different background, so they don't have to have it. So, all right, fair enough. Every company can have an army trait and up to 3 other traits. These traits are what really define things and really bring in the fun. There's some pages of these. They're well thought out. Each of these has other traits that are not compatible with, you know, the current trait you're looking at underneath, just to stop people building monsters or accidentally doing something like building something that's both slow and fast at the same time. But this is where you put in things like, my group has thrown weapons. My group has the ability to deliver a close range barrage of devastating weapons like grenades or fire breath or something. My guys fire with bows. My guys are highly skilled archers. My guys have powerful missile weapons like crossbows and so on that are slow. I need to essentially be stationary and doing reload actions to use them, but on the other hand, they tend to defeat armor. My guys have ferocious charge. My guys are mounted. I can carry a character as a passenger. Just so many things, you know, belligerent characters, rabble, militia, additional movement, highly disciplined, you know, there's just such an array of these things, you know, two-handed weapons, pikes, spears, shield wall capabilities, and some of them positive, some of them negative. You can choose, you might want to take troops that are like unreliable and a bit of a rabble because you're whittling the points down. You save points for this. I want my hideous goblin rabble. There are some things like mindless. We are skeletons and undead. That's kind of neat because the destruction of mindless units doesn't count to your morale for winning or losing the battle. If you lose units, normally, you know, once you've lost a set amount of units, the game's over. But mindless ones, no one cares. However, mindless ones have to be more directly under control of someone. If they lose their direct control, then they tend to stand around and go, die, and, you know, etc. So, you know, yeah, gets what you pays for. So you can make anything you want. You want outrageous lizard warriors, you want swift elven cavalry, you want graboids that tunnel up from under the ground, you want harpies that, you know, lure people in with strange songs. It's all in there, and you can customize, and it's all well costed, so nothing's a battle winner. You get what you pay for. There are also army stratagems that you can pay for when you're building a force. You can just take like 1 or 2, and these are kind of interesting things, like you've got very active scouts out, so you get some hints as to the other guy's disposition before you begin. Your guys are well supplied, or you have a master of horse, so your cavalry forces are a bit more well trained, etc., etc. So those are all things you can spend on. The other thing that you purchase are characters. There's a set number of characters per, 500 points you can have. Everyone gets an overall general. This can be a warlord or a mage lord. More on the magic later. And every 500 points you can have, I think it's between 0 to 3 captains, which are sub-commanders. You can also get mages, who are magic users, and you can get rogues, who are not brilliant generals. They don't cast magic, but they're really good for killing other people's characters. You can get 1 in an army, and it's really there to just be a bit of a dick, wouldn't you say? So, so you design and purchase your armies. Characters can carry relics. I've got a list of little relics and so on you can get. Some of these are like mighty banners and so on that make it easy for them to rally troops, or magical weapons that make them better in combat, or a number of different interesting things. And there is a list of spells that your magic users can take. Before the game, each magic user gets 3 spells, but they can take one spell 3 times. The effects stack on some of them. Some of these are artillery style spells, magic missiles, you do direct attacks. Some of them you imbue units with more resolve or more melee power. You can also do a bless, which kind of heals units that have lost resolve. Little teleportation spells that can pick units up and move them a few base widths. And a bunch of cool things. Summonation is a cute one where you start like building up some points. When you get enough, you summon a unit onto the field. So not absolute battle winners, but great fun and useful, and so a great ploy. The other thing you can do is you can have character units. You can design a unit that is a character. So say I want like a warrior priest unit for my lizard men. They're going to be a character because I want that unit to be able to cast magic and so on. So they've got rules for that. Or I want like a unit of great renown. You might want to make that as a character. And they can also issue commands and so on if you make them the right sort of character and these sorts of things. So really flexible. Also, like, there are a lot of miniatures out there that Warhammer sort of groups made where you always get like a mighty general or a strider dragon. You would design that as an individual dragon that can take a passenger, because then both the character and the mount get their own actions. You could make them as a character unit, but you might want to give them more options. So the game itself, all distances are measured in base widths, which I love. That's really simple. The movement is nice and clear and simple. You pivot and then move. The individual bases, if you're just running units that are a single company, they can kind of pivot a couple of times as they move. What you're looking for is to reduce a unit's resolve to 0, whereupon it routes and flees. And when it gets very low, it can no longer advance towards the enemy and so on. Why you group companies together is that unit groups its aggregate resolve together. So if you've got companies that have a base resolve of 3 and you've got a unit of 4 of them, it's a resolve of 12 for the unit. If you have characters and they attach themselves to a unit, they add their own resolve, because these guys are saying, forward men, onwards, a rolling stone gathers more, a spy short, settle long, a turkey in every garage, a Buick in every pot, now come on, etc. So the actual game play, what you do is you take some counters or dice of a different color for each player, and at the start of a game you look at the board and all characters have a command radius around them. Obviously a big one for your warlords, your captains get a smaller one. Magicians and so on can only command a unit that they are attached to, but you put a one counter or dice into a cup for your army, if that army has any units that are outside of command range, and then you put dice or counters in, one for each character that can command troops. That goes in for both sides, round, you shake them, and then you take them at random. So it's a staggered turn. But what happens is the first person, one person gets initiative. They begin with shooting. Shooting is essentially simultaneous, but you take it in turns adjudicating units, but the effects of the fire all comes to pass at the end of the shooting turn. So none of this you go, I go stuff. Everybody who can will shoot. Then you take those dice or counters that you've got and you pull them out. The first counter for a side that is drawn, all units that are outside of command, this is their one, they then do a little dice roll check, because the ones that are out of command, they do stuff, but it's random. You roll some dice on a little tiny chart, and the units might just stand there and do nothing. They might head towards the nearest enemy. They might even do something really stupid and panic. These are the extremes. It's a 2d6 dice roll, so it's a bell curve. But some of the design of the units comes into that. If you've picked unreliable guys, they are more likely to panic. If you've picked belligerent or reckless troops, they default to the higher end, where they will find the nearest enemy and turn towards them. You can even make some units that are just barely held in check from attacking their own side, and there's a chance they might attack their own side. But once you've done your impetuous units, you then do the commands issued by each of your characters as you draw a dice or a counter. You pick a character and you issue commands to the units within its command radius, and the movement zone is really kind of generous, but essentially everyone gets an action, and there's a list of actions. Individual characters can do stuff like they can attach themselves onto a unit, or they can cast a spell, and units can move. They can stop and use special abilities. If they are groups that have like very powerful weapons, they can stop in place and essentially reload the weapons, or they can stay and try and dress the ranks and recover lost resolve. And so there's a whole bunch of actions that you can choose. It's not just move. And then at the end of the thing, you resolve any combats that have come from units bumping together. It's quite generous about kind of squaring up. It's very simple. It's very clear. I love the movement. No puzzling over ridiculous ipso factos. No rules lawyership. So in combat, essentially a unit rolls dice d6s equal to its melee dice. However, if you've picked some special things, they will add extra dice. So if you picked Furious Charge and you charge the enemy, you'll get some extra dice. If you've got something like long spears or pikes and are charged, or are in combat against things like mounted troops, large monsters, aerial creatures, and so on, then you get a bonus. What you're doing is you're rolling your dice and you're trying to get equal to or higher than your opponent's defense score. Now, this can also be modified if you've got two-handed weapons. It's their defense always defaults down to a 4. So, and things like shield wall and so on, they add to your defense unless you're against the two-handed weapons, etc., etc., etc. So, hits are removed from the other side's resolve. If someone's resolve reaches 0, that unit routes off. Quite simple. Units that have the skirmisher ability can evade if they're charged. Flyers can evade if they're charged. This is a very clear, very easy to run game. The back half of these have a really considerable set of suggested army lists, as in showing you what you can do. So here's wood elves, here's high elves, here's lizard guys, here's mighty rat swarms, different types of dwarven kingdoms. Halflings. The halflings are hilarious. They had a great time with the halflings. In their examples, they had like regenerate as one of the powers you could get. So this is for things like trolls, or maybe if you've got lizards or skinks that physically regenerate. So essentially an action they can do is stay in place and attempt to regenerate resolve. So, it could also represent units of halflings that have got a field kitchen with them. So it's like, I love it. There's also some miniatures of halflings riding chickens and things, so someone's looked at that and said, oh, well, look, that doesn't really count as mounted. It's not going to give you much of a bonus in charge, but what we're going to do is say this makes these units, more fleet of foot, so they're faster, and, we'll give them skirmish. So yes, ride those chickens. They had a hell of a good time. So the sample armies they've done have got some great flavour to them. So they've done things like they've got a vampire army there, where it's all vampires and werewolves and succubi and these sorts of things. The army shtick that these ones have got is feast. If they destroy a unit, then they gain a resolve, because they feast upon the blood of the enemies. They've done like a classic Tolkien style Dark Lord army, where all the units are expendable, which means they don't count against army morale. So if you lose them, doesn't care. But the characters do count against army morale. So the only thing that Sauron and so on cares about is losing Nazgul and Mouth of Sauron and that sort of thing. It's like hordes of orcs and whatever. Yeah, we don't care. So yes, they've made some really nice examples showing you how to put sort of a flavour into an army. There's a temptation, of course, to go there into the design system and try and make super troops, and you're perfectly welcome to, and they will cost the earth, and you won't have many of them on the board. Again, way better to have a shtick. So it's like, if you find lizard man figures that look kind of Aztec-y and they've all got clubs and this sort of stuff, then go for it. However, those figures and so on, because they're going for a fairly low tech, you'll notice they don't have like ridiculous artillery pieces or even bows. These are all kind of hand cast missiles and so on that they use. Great. However, these things are ferocious, so you're going to end up designing an army. These guys are basically ferocious charge, berserk infantry. And they might have a few kind of skirmishes with sort of blowpipes and this sort of stuff, but not for them, wall-to-wall longbowmen, my friends. No, these guys are like, in you go. Or you get characters for the elves. The elves, like one of the examples I got in there is the elves have got sort of shield wall and long spear. They get a bonus if they're attacked rather than attacking. But what you can do is you can make the units both spear and bow. So it's got a front couple of ranks of spear, and the rest are skilled longbow. It lowers the resolve of the unit because of the shooting, but on the other hand, they can shoot. So they're trying to cause casualties from a distance and bring someone onto the spears. But it makes their infantry a very passive arm. It's one that you bring forward and you use to hold an area. It's not a great one for doing offensives. But that's the character of that army. So, its maneuver arm and arm of decision is going to be the mighty elven knights and these sorts of things. So, yeah, character comes through really strongly in these rules. So I love it. So, look, I think these are a great buy. You can find them on Amazon. You can also find them on drive-through. Fantastic battles by Irregular Wars. It's a really, really, really good set of rules, a great buy. They are clear, easy to play. They've got tons of character in them, tons of flavour. You sit there. It's one of those things, once you open it and read it, you immediately grab a piece of paper and start trying to design troops. So it's like, I loved the hobgoblins and Dungeons and Dragons, which had kind of samurai-ish looking armour and so on and whatever. It's like, yeah. Wait, what if... Spear gets a bonus if it's attacked, but what if I combine Spear with Furious Charge, which it says that I can't? Then I've got like troops that get a bonus if they're attacked, but I'm also not passive. I go, yeah, that sounds kind of hobgoblin-y. So, all right, so you can suddenly look at Pendragon Miniatures or something who have some great, Yari-armed 10mm samurai, and it's like, aha, there we go. So yeah, you get inspiration and start scribbling away and coming up with cool stuff. And that's what these are. They're not confined by a range. You make your army to the vision that you want to, and it becomes entirely yours. So look, it's not an expensive game to set up in, like if you're using your 6mm and 10mm. The design is excellent. It doesn't have that Warhammer thing where you're going to have 9,000 dice rolling all over the table and then re-rolling and then re-rolling and then re-rolling. So no, they've streamlined that for play. I think this is a good game, a really good game. It's Schnoots approved. So anyway, I thought I would bring that to you, and I thought I would bring that to you in Strange Exotic Climes outside our wacky temple. So I shall keep I should keep wandering the tropics, do a couple more reviews for you guys, unless I'm carried off by some kind of bird or bat. But until then, bye!